And we're live. It's fantastic to be here. Welcome, welcome, everybody. How are you all doing?
Good, thanks.
Very good.
Absolutely fine.
Okay, let's get that energy level nice and high. Right, let's find out where we all are. I'm going to go around the room in the order that I think we're in, just find out where we are, 10 seconds on who you are, and then I'll ask you all a quick question. Paul, where are you and who are you?
So I'm down in Brighton. We're 5 minutes from the sea here in the UK. And I'm wearing a couple of hats today, but I've decided both academic. I'm very interested in AI at the University of Brighton in the field of innovation, and also in the field of digital leadership at the University of Warwick.
Wonderful. Paul, what was the spark that got you into AI?
Fear for the future, which always sparks curiosity.
Vibhav, where are you and who are you?
Hi, my name is Vibhav. I am from New Delhi, India. I'm an intellectual property rights lawyer. I am an AI enthusiast. I've been, much like my other field, it's all over the place. And I'm very curious to learn more about it. And I'm exploring about AI. And
the spark for you, Vibhav, the moment we wanted to do more in this domain?
Just curiosity, just the way it spread everywhere.
That's the way to do it. Linda, same question.
Hi, Richard. Hi, everyone. I'm super pleased to be here. So I'm Italian, but I'm in London right now. So yeah, I'm really close to Victoria. And I'm a management engineer. But a couple of years ago, I started my journey into data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. And I really decided to put my interest in what has been called as responsible AI or ethical AI, because I think that it is not just important as a human point of view, human being, but also because it can be the bridge for the technical world and people. So my spark has been definitely curiosity, because it is everywhere, right? AI, and yes, again, I'm really super keen on innovation, so it's something that I think we should all care of.
We're in great company, Linda. Thank you. Let's go around in clockwise. Seb, the same question for you. Where are you calling in from, and what do we need to learn about you?
I'm calling from London, but I'm Luxembourg Iranian, I mentioned earlier, and so by background I'm a lawyer. So I used to work in international arbitration, suing states essentially, and then transitioned to AI policy through a master's in public administration. So I worked with the UK government's Office for AI on the UK's kind of AI strategy, and subsequently been advising various companies and public sector organizations on responsible AI, including standards, regulation, and so on. And I'm now going to soon be starting a role at Stanford University in 2 weeks as a senior tech policy researcher.
I got introduced to you recently, Seb, and I had a look at your CV. It was one of those imposter moments, like, wow. It's an incredible CV. You're having this amazing career, and thank you that you're dedicating your time to this kind of work.
So very kind. I get the imposter syndrome myself all the time, so no worries.
Seb, was there a spark for you, or was this a gradual interest?
I think it was a bit of both. I mean, I've been involved in technology for a long time, but AI specifically, I think, was through my involvement with the effective altruism movement about 7 years ago or so, where there was a lot of thinking about kind of long-term risk and so on. And so I think that got me started thinking about societal implications of AI, and the rest is history.
Fantastic. Odilia.
Yeah, hello everybody. I'm Odilia. I'm Italian, but I'm connected from France, where I'm a PhD candidate in electronics. I have a variegated academical background, so what I see in AI is for me the opportunity to bridge my philosophical background and my technical background. So I'm really enthusiastic to engaging in discussion.
I love that. If you want to explore philosophy, theology, science, maths, it's all here. It's all in this one domain. Yeah. What was the spark for you, Adelia?
It's mainly, I really want to give my contribution to AI, because I think it's the major challenge of the years that we are living in. So.
Wonderful. Thank you. Anna, welcome.
Thanks a
Where
lot.
are you? Who are you?
Yeah, I am Bano, based in Germany, originally from Georgia, and also I'm founder of a nonprofit organization AI Governance International, and I also work sometimes in parallel in Georgia and in Germany in terms of AI governance strategies on a local governmental level. And also I'm an independent consultant for AI ethics and policy and governance. And my interest, so basically I got addicted to AI topic because it kind of incorporated all of my interests, like in politics, in technologies, in geopolitics, social, psychology, and so on. So I have a social science background, but then I joined the AI League.
Wonderful. But they always say, make sure you're not the smartest person in the room. So I've achieved that for definite. I'm almost exclusively the dumbest person in this room. So I've made the right choice today to learn from you amazing people. Jaisal, Delphine, Alaman, welcome. Thank you for posting those kind comments. Keep them coming. We're here for your questions. Read out your statements, get your insights. So tell us if you're watching, let us know you're here, and keep us good company for the next 54 minutes while we have this detailed conversation. Paul, help me get started on this one, and tell me if it's not. But is this a good question? This question about the business rationale for ethical AI, is it even the right question before we get into this?
Richard, I think we'll look back on this one day and say it was the question of the age that we either ignored or really got to grips with. And just taking the liberty just for literally a minute or two to wear an academic hat, I think it is good to be conceptual because there's a lot of opinion around here, but just 3 words to maybe spark the conversation. Mythical, ethical, and logical, going back to mythos, ethos, and logos. And by mythical, what I mean is lots of people in the AI space at the moment have, whether they know it or not, a mythos. They have visions for AI. It's everything from AI is going to save the world, AI is going to enhance humanity, AI is going to replace humanity, AI is going to deal with climate change, it's going to prevent COVID in the future, it's going to make us all more competitive. Lots and lots of people are looking to AI and experimenting now in AI, and whether they know it or not, they have a vision. They have a set of values that are assumed or overt, that are right along that spectrum of brutal to very, very benevolent. And so at one level, mythos is all about that vision because that guides the behavior. And ethos is our codes of behavior. And just being slightly kind of, I guess, neutrally academic for a while, ethical doesn't necessarily mean good. You could be fairly evil and your code of behavior is your ethic as you're being evil. But what I think we all mean at the moment in AI is AI for good. AI ethical means something good or benevolent. So, is our vision matching up with our current ethics? What we know is that people don't have codes of ethics. The innovation is running faster than ethical catch-up, which often happens in this field, and that leads to potential danger. Logical, logos, is actually the overt behavior that we measure, hopefully, too. And if we know that our ethical codes are actually being realized by our coders, we know that quite a lot of coded AI at the moment has been operating in an ethical vacuum without guidance. Sometimes it's about the way we're brought up. And, certainly in the gaming sector, we've had games that have come out that have then been taken to court, had to be taken down, apologized because of the appalling behaviors that even kids are behaving as they kill the hell out of each other and do much worse because there was not an ethical underpinning or an ethical conversation. So we know this stuff needs to happen. And those 3 kind of need to be in balance. And as I say again, I think you'll find we're coding faster, we're inventing faster than we are considering, which is always dangerous. If that's in the world of medicines, we'd end up with a vaccine that kills everybody. And things are speeding up all the time. The final thing then is just to kind of seed the conversation. I'm hoping you guys might pick this up with just 2 or 3 quick examples of why then there's a business rationale for AI and ethics right now. One is simply the litigation culture. It's out there now. It's probably going to grow further. I'm sure Vibhav and others might need to talk about this more. Now we're talking about intellectual property. We're talking about the consequences of where we're locating our AI effort in the world of open source, but also in the world of protectionism and Apple about to go head to head with Facebook again and all of that kind of stuff. So do you want to be in the company who is retrospectively sued 10 years from now because the RoboCop shot the board? Or released something in the nanosphere that killed large numbers of people? The decisions you make now in terms of ethics will decide your innovation pathways that you may well regret later. And we've got lots of evidence that companies that put in ethical frameworks in all sorts of places, that prevents problems in the future. Businesses are, of course, about risk management. So ethical AI is the ground, it's the foundation of the building going forward. A second one is simply about generation A, generation B and C, even the post-millennial generation. As we emerge from lockdown, you know, it's always kind of the icon is Greta Thunberg, but we know we have climate change issues and so on, and we know that people are voting with their feet. They are going to be the customers of the now and the future that will not align themselves to products and services in an ethical vacuum, or even worse, we haven't mentioned the word, a moral vacuum, where those ethical codes are tied to a mythos that's largely greedy, you know, grasping, is at the effect on other organizations is negative, on cultures. People don't want that going forward. So ethical AI is part of competitive advantage going forward, which is absolutely key. Finally, of course, we've got the issues about risk and cybersecurity. And so ethical AI will tend to be that where we work collaboratively, where we work openly, where we share data, where we decide who is right and who we work with, will reduce risk in the cybersecurity space. Just 3 examples. I'm sure there are many more. So without building that foundation now, we're heading in a path that really could make the science fiction nightmare movies real.
Paul, I'm going to transcribe what you just said, and I'm going to read it like 5 times. And at that point in the future, I'm going to have some excellent comments on that. But that's so much to take in, so much content in there. Seb, let me just put your mic on to pull out a couple of points that Paul did focus on in there. He talked about some of the extremes, the extreme risks of using AI in corporations, you know, deaths and travesties and these things. But if we look at the process in the company, they're collecting data, they're storing data, they're sharing data, they're selling data, they're processing data. And of course, that's where the AI part typically comes in. It's not just extremes, though, is it, that could derail some of these companies? There's lots of very careful and good decision making that just needs to go into the basics, doesn't there, for them to succeed this decade and beyond? Is that how you see it, Seb, or not?
Yeah, definitely. You know, I think there's the scale of different types of risks and ethical conundrums in the field, and I think just starting off from data collection, there's a lot of things you need to think about at that stage. Examples of that might be making sure your data set is representative. Depending on the context, the data set might be underrepresentative or overrepresentative. That might have consequences on the AI system itself. Ensuring the data set is fit for purpose, the sufficiency, that the source you got it from is good, and that you're measuring the right things. So, a lot of decisions you make, even at the very early stages of the process, will influence the product, its safety, and its risk profile. And so obviously you've got risks like with extreme risk with things like self-driving cars killing people and so on. You also have instances of algorithms making slightly biased decisions, but also leading to outputs then used by other algorithms, leading to some feedback loops that can be quite harmful in replicating various kind of structural or systemic issues we already see. So we've got, for example, in mind we've all seen the Compass algorithm debacle in the US, or ways AI being used by the judiciary or by the police could be easily misused or equally lead to unintended consequences. So there's definitely a whole range of risks, and I think the way you think about the problem you're trying to solve, the way you build your algorithms, the data sets, keep an eye on it, and so on, all that matters quite a lot in ensuring that the stuff you build isn't harmful, whether unintentionally or intentionally. Well, intentionally you wouldn't do that, I guess.
Anna, but who cares about the kind of things that Seb's describing? Does the consumer care, or is this just a case of compliance and legislation and avoiding fines? What are the actual drivers to put this kind of vision that Paul's describing in place?
Yeah, I think that's kind of a question that I've been quite stuck with my writing the blog about the responsible AI, what we call responsible AI, because it consists of the main complex steps, and it includes all the stakeholders that are using or interacting or deploying artificial intelligence technologies. So basically, these are the people who, the companies themselves, who are building AI technologies, then who are deploying that, and it's their incentives or responsibility to actually use the technologies ethically. Then comes the users itself, that I'm always emphasizing on, that we should not only encourage the responsible use of responsible business for artificial intelligence, but also responsible user, because sometimes the companies like to put a lot of responsibility to the users, that they need to read the privacy policy, that they need to understand how the technology works, and if they see the risk, they should just delete the application. And sometimes this is a position from even the government side, from the regulators, but this is kind of not a very viable option if you consider that. We've seen how many clashes, for example, Facebook had in the recent years, but we also see that Facebook is still mostly used social application. It has more than 2 billion users around the world still, even though people know that it's kind of stealing the data or doing some political persuasion with Cambridge Analytica. It still has a lot of users because probably the users do not see good replacement for the application. So it's not only companies, it's not only users, it's not only regulators. It's always like this, all the stakeholders or the people who are interacting and using this application to be responsible for it. And they might have very different incentives or motivations to take care of it.
Okay, so many good points in there. We need to come back to incentives. And there was a journalist for the Wall Street Journal, and she printed off all the T's and C's documents of just the app she was using. So literally the ones she had right then on her phone and laptop, printed them out. And if you place them alongside each other, they ran the length of a football pitch, these A4 sheets, just unbelievable amounts of data. And to be honest, that goes out the window, right? You can have all the T's and C's and that you want on Zoom and StreamYard and LinkedIn, but then we walk out there and there's CCTV and facial recognition, and you get in a car and it's a connected car and it's a taxi or a friend's car with cameras in it, and then you go to a friend's house and they've got Alexa on, and the T's and C's don't help you, right? In any of those situations. Vibhav, what do you make of that? I mean, what's the point in all this legislation if then out there we're just in a jungle of data collection which isn't even linked back to any personal privacy or sovereignty in the first place?
This is a very good question. These very good comments. There were 3 points that I wanted to answer that. One, I think when we're looking at the ethical aspect of AI, one aspect is trust. And when we're talking about trusting AI, and I'm connecting this to what we've discussed about, one way of looking at AI is from the point of compliance and regulation, but that, in my view, is a smaller subset of the larger set. We have to first, starting off from where Paul started off, myth versus reality. We have to have an understanding of what AI can do and at what AI cannot do. The unfortunate part in the ethics discussion that happens is that we're also a little bit focused in terms of super intelligence and everything. So we focus on what AI can do. Alexa is a great example. Self-driving cars is an example, and how AI is being applied today. And then we look at, and when we focus on that, and then from there, we identify, okay, this is how it's being applied. This is the issue. This is the reason where we can address some ethical issues on what is being applied today. And that component we take for compliance perspective. Simultaneously, we have to look at, when we're looking at ethical considerations of AI, we're also forward-looking. So then simultaneously, it's like a double sort of a conversation. So what I'm trying to do here in brief is just bring in 2 points for us to frame in discussion. One is to see how we are building trust. And 2, when we're discussing ethics in AI, are we clear about what AI can do today and what we hope AI would do, and then sort of shape it within that. And as to coming to your question directly, Richard, the compliance part is right now grappling with what AI is doing today and how that is leading to certain unintended consequences, whether it be in the criminal justice system, whether it be in your financial bank applications or in any other application. But any discussion that we have, we should understand this difference. We cannot blur with what it cannot happen with versus what is happening right now. Hope that added some shape.
It most definitely does. Let's just do a quick hello to people who've been commenting and joining in. We've got some questions coming up that we'll get to in just a moment. I see Edward here, is Edward Darling. Edward, we must do an MKAI field trip to your farm this summer. We must come and have a look at some of the sustainable practices you've implemented, and maybe you'll put a link up to the life map. It's incredible work you're doing. I know Marcus is here. He must be one of the LinkedIn users that we're seeing. Unfortunately, Marcus got his privacy locked down. Very good, sir. Very good. That's good for you, but we can't see it here. Alexandra's here with the MKAI team, which is amazing. Great to see you. Jeff Easter's here. Can we strive for AI for peace? What a wonderful thing to say. Josh Shabed is here as well. I put your comment up earlier. Darren, great to see you. Jyoti, great to see you. And hearing that you're getting better as well. That's really good news. Olivia's got a question we can come back to. Russell, always great to see you. You're very, very welcome. And some other LinkedIn users who we can't know who they are, but we're very, very pleased to see your presence here as well. Keep those statements and questions coming. Vibhav brought up the T word. Hazel's waving. That's wonderful. The T word, trust. Errol, great to see you. Always nice to see you. Adelia, what does trust mean? I mean, we just heard about Facebook, and none of these companies seem to be very ethical in the looser sense of that word, or in the data collection. It seems to have been a bit of a free-for-all, a jungle. We'll stay ahead of the regulation, you know, make hay while the sun shines. Do we have any trust for Facebook and others like them? If not, can we rebuild that? What do you make of the environment at the moment?
Yeah, I think that the main problem with these tech monopolies is that they are not doing what they say. So we cannot trust them because they leverage our weaknesses, and they exploiting our data to build their billions dollars empires. So well, I really think that today, thanks to the disruption of blockchain and smart contracts, for example, we can maybe see an alternative. So, as you may know, Brave company, for example, just launched this web browser that prioritize privacy. Until here, I mean, this is not a real novelty because we already had DuckDuckGo or other browser that care about users' privacy. But the thing that makes Brave unique is that they decide to rebuild the trust with users by rewards their attention. So what does it mean? It means that by default, all the advertisements and third parties tracking are blocked. But if the user would like to, he can watch them, and then he will be rewarded by means of micropayments that are made with these coins that is called basic attention coins. So then users can, of course, accumulate them in a wallet. They can exchange with other digital assets. And Brave even announced that they are going to allow online payments on certain websites. So the interesting things on this is that micropayments are allowed even in the other way around. It means that users can decide to tip creator of content that they like. So in this way, we really see a shift of paradigm because users are no longer just see as a passive watcher that has to be fed with advertised, but they have back a sort of maybe we can even use the term of political and human dimension, because they can decide where they would like to direct their attention, and they can decide where they want to, who they want to tip, for example. So I really think that Brave is a unique example, is an extraordinary example that shows us how it's possible to build a value marketplace. They can reward everyone in the chain and not just the monopolists. So.
Thank you so much. It's a wonderful point. At this stage, like, all our data, all our content is just flowing straight up to creating billion-dollar companies. That doesn't seem terribly ethical, or maybe even sustainable in the market. It'll be interesting to see that. Linda, let me come to you and let me pop Russell's question up at the same time that we can reflect on, because I'm interested in this bottom-up versus top-down. So Russell says the consumer should be very interested in AI ethics. Without this, there may be more bias in AI models, consciously or unconsciously, of course, which could affect the experience of dealing with the entities such as models, a general expectation that we should all strive to not be unethical. We've had coded bias, the movie mentioned as well in the chat, which has been good to being brought up. Is this all part of the movement that maybe Odilia is describing to different business models, decentralized models, tokenized models, that it all starts with us caring a bit more, understanding a bit more? Is that partly the answer?
Yeah, and Richard, before answering this question, I would like us to pick up some topics that you guys brought up, and I would like really to give you a provoking thought that I had, because we talk about tech monopolies, we talk about trust, we talk about the risk of using AI in big corporations, and my question is, what can be the risk of using AI among individuals? Because right now, and I'm talking really as developer, so as data scientist, there are a lot of tools that are making the process of building ML models really easy. So just to summarize the steps of how an AI system or ML model is built, you need to have data to build your ML model, to feed this model with the data you have, and you can have your results. And now, as I was saying, there are a lot of tools that are claiming to automatize and make automatic this process. You don't have to have a strong technical background, and with just a few clicks, you can build your model run and make predictions. Now we have also data, and so let's pretend that we're going to have this huge amount of data to feed our model. It means that me, as Linda, I will be able to build my model. But models, so AI results, like data, is anything but neutral. So this can be a huge risk, because we live in a world and in a society where we think that numbers and data is the source of any truth. So we really should be careful. We really should be careful about how we use the results of AI models that we build. Otherwise, we're gonna spread information that can harm someone without any reason. And I think that that's something that we should really think about when democratizing data and spreading the results of AI models that we are not sure and we don't trust deeply. And coming back to your questions, Richard, so from my experience, I think that in order to build fair and ethical AI models, we need to have the buy-in from either top-down levels and bottom-up. And when I say top-down, Seb mentions that there are a lot of frameworks around, and I had a look about that. They are incredible, and they're important because they are telling us which are the principles which we should look at in order to build an AI model, but more than that, an AI ecosystem. But what I think and I feel is missing sometimes are quantitative metrics and the practical steps that developer from the bottom up could use to understand and to exactly detect if a model is biased or not. I think this is, and there are already a lot of great tools around. I have recently had a webinar about Clarify, that is a tool from SageMaker from AWS that is helping developers to understand when and how much classes might be imbalanced, and so how much a model can be unfair or not. But again, I would like in the future that developers and data scientists will be trained not just in increasing the accuracy of a model, but also all of those metrics that help to understand the fairness and the and how much a model should be trusted.
Richard, could I pop
Paul,
in?
I was going to come to you anyway, actually.
Yeah. Well, I feel that it's perfect because in a lot of ways, we've already got in the chat and one or two people talking about being fair, being kind of good or bad. And I think there we're talking about moral AI. And of course, that overlaps with ethical AI. But I think a key word, I hope we can develop this further too, because it does go down to that level of what I call logical logos measurement and the data, which is integrity. And that word often comes up with ethics. Integrity is the harmonization between what you say and what you do. Organizations put out strategies and they say every customer is a unique individual and we are committed to diversity. And then when the chatbot appears, it seems to label everybody clumsily, demonstrates bias, and the customer experience is one where they often laugh at the corporation. I mean, it's early stage, but these chatbots are going to become more nuanced and so on. And I think one part of that integrity is that, of course, models require simplicity. Particularly if budgets are low in organizations, they will often go for measurement that is binary, which is the nature of coding at the moment, of the 1 and the 0, of the kind of if then else statement in coding. And the problem with that is organizations that have been, for example, committing to diversity will also know the term hidden diversity, that you can label somebody male, you can label someone from an ethnic background, or they can label themselves. But by the time we get down to hidden diversity, that's the stuff we do with intuition to say, but this person actually is quite shy and doesn't want to be asked lots of questions. This person actually would like to be drawn out. All of that stuff, which is going to be the challenge for AI, is, and we have this at university. I'm in a subject group called Responsible Enterprise and Innovation, and we teach creativity. The first thing we teach our students is life isn't 1 or 0, but polarizing can be useful. But then there's not just this or that, there's this and that. There is the third way. There is the nuance, and that defies measurement. That's not easy to put through the data. And there's a lot of evidence that if you look at the curricula of universities in coding and so on, that there is not enough teaching of creative thinking, of lateral thinking, of the idea that we can build in code really complex qualitative thinking of 1s and 0s, but the models have to become quite complicated. They're going to have to inductively learn. That's what machine learning is about, and so on. Now, what happens at the moment is the organizations are putting out values. They're even getting people to sign up. They're using advertising, but the experience on the ground is of cold binary deployment, often based on data sets that are based on very few variables. And while we're in that case, we have a lack of integrity. So organizations, again, that want to experience customers coming back need to create experiences. They should either not go for it in the first place and not do the chatbot because it's rubbish, or what they're going to have to do is actually recognize the weaknesses, develop, I think, as Linda's pointing out, very, very clearly shared across the organization and even in the industry, standards of what the metrics are, what the data is trying to do, but most of all, and this is the check, does it match the ethical code? Does it match the rhetoric that the organization's putting out? Because what you end up with, of course, and this was the other word, is a lack of trust from customers. And if you want to make a case, you know, business case, do you want to reduce trust? Is that going to be good for your strategy? Because at the moment, poor deployment of AI that doesn't have integrity is diminishing the brand.
Can I add to that as well? Actually, I think that's a really good point. I agree with the whole, what you said about integrity and trust. And I think one of the verifying what a company or a group states is a really important part of ensuring that you're trustworthy. And I think there's a very good paper published last year in March called "Towards Trustworthy AI: Mechanisms for Supporting Verifiable Claims," and that had a lot of very interesting suggestions and proposals to ensure the trustworthiness of AI systems that companies built. And I saw a question in the chat around that as well. What should companies essentially do? Like, what do you start? are doing. And there's a lot of different things. They're both institutionally on the software level and even hardware. And a proposal I really liked was the third-party auditing of AI systems. There's a lot of different groups right now, like AI Global in Canada, For Humanity in New York, and the ICO here in the UK, just looking at ways and frameworks to audit AI systems. And we've also seen that with the EU regulations published last week. I think conformity assessments, which are essentially a very similar kind of mechanism, also looking at that. And I think these types of frameworks, tools will be quite important for a company to be able to demonstrate and signal trust to consumers, to policymakers, and the market more generally.
One thing I want to raise at this point, and Anna, I'll ask you to pick this one up, is that we're having this conversation about the business rationale for ethical AI. And right now, there's probably other groups, other forums taking place right now, which are like the business rationale for diversity, the business rationale for sustainability. Is it ultimately like the same conversation, Anna? Are we asking companies to really care, to really step up, rather than just creating CSR or ESG departments or an ethical officer or whatever? Are we asking for a step change in these kind of conversations?
Yes, exactly. So that's the major question, the major difference between compliance and the kind of voluntary, voluntary being ethical and doing ethical AI, and difference between even CSR and also wanting to be really responsible. So that's the question I was really exploring. So one of the incentives that I have also mentioned, so basically that is to really be kind of afraid of compliance issues to be fined, and data breaches or AI regulatory breaches. That is one thing. But another thing is reputation, and but even reputation is not kind of enough if you take if you consider these issues. Because companies know that, especially the big companies, if you take Google or Amazon or Facebook, they know that even if they do something not very ethical, they will still not lose a lot of users because they are only ones on the market. So the reputation or branding is not kind of good answer to the to incentivizing companies to be really responsible. And then for me, so far, the answer that I have found to be most viable for me, that is generally raising awareness in people, and people I mean, so what is company? Company, it is limited liability company, but it is not an abstract body, right? It consists of the people. So the people who work and who are actually building the technologies. And if we somehow manage to raise the awareness among the people, what are the real risks or what are the damages that their technologies are causing to the wider societies, billions of people and millions of people, users around the world, then probably it can be one of the solutions that you make these people separately, the each and every person in the organization to be incentivized to care about the work that they're doing. One thing, and another thing also, and again, the user. So it is also the user's responsibility and the user's responsibility to kind of demand from the companies to be more responsible. So to report the risks that when they see, to report the harm or to report the hate speech even in social media. I don't know if you have already seen, Facebook has a limited access on the internal report that has concluded that they have failed addressing the social media hate speech recently. So the internal employees have lost the access to the report, actually, not to work on that. So it is, as we have seen in the Facebook's case, sometimes the companies themselves, the management and the people who are driven basically by money, they try to kind of limit the understanding or awareness what their technologies are really doing to the society. And also they try to limit the awareness to the users and the people. But recently I also see some kind of actions by the organizations. For example, in facial recognition system, there has been some technology to kind of give the access to the people to try out the faces, how it works, the facial recognition. And also a lot of non-profit organizations, including my organization, are working towards that. And also, like, at the context of SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals has been especially interesting for us as well. We have the webinar series, AI for SDGs, and for us, that was again the question, like SDGs still goes under the corporate social responsibility framework for the companies, even if they're caring, even if they're doing anything in the context of that. So they rarely do, that's what I mean. So how do you incentivize them to actually put the sustainable development goals under their, like, SDGs by design for artificial intelligence applications, rather than just using it for corporate social responsibility and for their reputation or for their brand awareness? So that has been questions that I've been exploring personally also with the organization. And one of the major aspects and answers that I found was that raising general awareness for the people, whoever the people is under organization or under as an end user.
Anna, stay with just for one more moment. If we just keep zooming out, and you are talking about the big picture here, which is amazing, then we're sort of describing existing companies here, and companies find it hard to change, like full stop. It doesn't matter what the context is of change, it's hard. And the bigger the company, you know, we know traditionally they can sometimes go out of business rather than change. Xerox, Kodak, you know, Blockbuster, examples of companies who have found that very difficult. But yet we have this new crop of companies that undoubtedly will be thinking differently about trust and privacy and the relationship with their consumers. If we keep that, you know, that really massive view on this, is it possible we just need those companies to die, the ones that aren't really going to be able to make these changes, and be replaced by the companies that grew out of a different era technologically?
So probably, I think if that happens, it's not going to be that we're going to target that scenario. It's going to kind of happen naturally. Odilia, oh my God, she has also talked about it. That, like, the companies that are not already answering the demands of the users, the modern users, aware users, they are kind of losing the users. For example, we have seen after Facebook announced the WhatsApp policy changes, like Signal and Telegram gained already like more than 25 million users around the world. And so we have already seen a kind of protest and a change in the market. It's not that we will not even need to target that to kill those companies. I think it's going to happen kind of naturally if we follow what we are really saying, if we are integral, what also Paul already mentioned, if we act on what we speak and that comply our own words, that to be responsible, to be aware what we are doing, then those companies will kind of fade out themselves if they do not follow up to the new solutions, including like even if it is blockchain. For example, I have also like on Twitter, I have seen recently one of the posts has been promoted for a month already. I think it's a new social media application. It is emerging new social media, and it is based on a blockchain technology, and it gives the user access to their data like on demand. So this will be new innovative technologies that will really replace those Google and Facebook or even Twitter if they do not really comply to the demands of the regulators and also to the users.
Wonderful. Sounds like an open letter when you say it like that to the industry. Anna, thank you. A quick hello to others that have tuned in. I can't remember if I said hello to Karen already or not, but I will now. And Shweta's here. And Michael Kanan's here. Do yourself a favor, go to Amazon and type in T-AI. Thank me later. You'll get a hold of Michael's amazing book. Let's see if we can come to his question in just a moment. Because Vibhav, I want to ask you about something that Anna pulled out, which is this kind of felt to me like maturity and expectations. And there was a question on this as well. Yeah, here it is. It hasn't got a name to it. we pop it up. It talks about infancy. So, you know, if you and I walk through a shopping mall, forget COVID times, we don't even notice the CCTV. And one of the main reasons is because we don't associate any harm with it. We don't think that footage of us walking through that shopping center is going to end up on YouTube. We don't sign anything. We haven't seen any T's and C's. We just kind of know how it works because we've had that. But I imagine the first time that you walked through a mall and you saw all these cameras on you, it must have been very odd and very disconcerting. Do you think it's just part of that maturity curve, Vibhav, that we are just such early days in these kind of surveillance technologies?
I think that there are 2 points to it. One, when you saw CCTV cameras initially, there was more in terms of a security aspect. But where the AI aspect has blended into it with passage of time is the one that where it becomes uncomfortable. So I think it's sort of, from a very candid perspective, seems from a sense of a little bit of security to a place of discomfort, and now it doesn't feel like a matter of choice, because it's already out there, and now you realize that you're already being monitored without having any knowledge of it, which is what I was wanting to bring a point, and thank you for bringing it here. Something that I was thinking that when we're looking at the business rationale for ethical AI, I wonder, and based on all the wonderful discussion that you had, I wonder whether a way to go about it, a way to understand it, because organizations are different. No organization is the same. Is there a way to go from backtrack from the impact? The impact of not being ethical will have certain uniform, there'll be uniform impact across the globe. It could be, we've discussed this, facial recognition or credit loan applications or anything of that sort. Can we, maybe to approach this entire discussion and to make it more homogeneous in terms of a more global this thing, can we identify that this impact is wrong, this impact is wrong, this impact is wrong, and if there are, let's say hypothetically in the world there are 10 organizations that are working on AI, and all of them agree that 4 out of these 5 things are not supposed to happen when you're using AI, then to mitigate that, we backtrack from there. And that could connect back to what the question you raised, Richard. The fact that you walked into a mall, you're being scanned, and now you're not comfortable. So the first question that then comes in is that, why am I not told about this? Is there something now moving forward that I can do to make sure that I'm protected? And that will then have to be both from both perspectives, compliance perspective that you've discussed, and second, just general impact of business on their market, on their visibility or image. And that's the most candid way of putting it across. The recent WhatsApp privacy policy aspect is a classic example of that. There are only 2 ways that I see this happening. One is compliance through awareness, which is a long process. Legal processes, no matter, I'm a lawyer, and legal processes help, but they are slow. And the other is image. So maybe what if we look at this from understanding and appreciating these impacts are not okay, and then we work backward from there.
Thank you, Vibhav. Thank you so much. Adelia, there's market forces that might bring about what Vibhav's talked about. Questions come in about, does this contain nuts? Does this contain AI? I suspect over the next decade, we're going to see a lot more badges and labels on things, whether, we haven't used algorithms on your data in this case, or, we guarantee your privacy. Do you think that's a radical step that some of the larger technology companies might take, perhaps even genuinely going through the process of making your data available and being able to delete it, change it, restrict it, because they know ultimately that's going to be good business to do that?
To be honest, I don't think that their business model will allow them to do that, because they actually are leveraging on the selling of our data. So what I think is that there is a structural problem in the way, for example, that CEO of startups has been forced to raise a big amount of capital from venture capitalists to attract venture capitalists that are always looking for these unicorns. But how many of these are really filled with hot air? I mean, we all see what happens with Uber or with WeWork. So what I think is that we should change this system from the basis. And this could be, for example, done coming again with a token. So if instead to do the classical APO, we can leverage on ICO, so initial coin offer, this will free the CEO for constantly looking on venture capital injections, and in this way they could maybe concentrate more on the development of a value product, on sustainability, and they can leverage. And here I can echo Vibhav, because we all know that legal process could be very, very slow. So an ICO will allow them to have more quickly access to money, and will also make all the bureaucracy unnecessary. And so in this way, we can think that other different business models are actually possible. But I really don't think that centralized based monopolies could allow this kind of change, because it's a structural problem.
I want to comment very quickly on that. I don't personally believe that blockchain or ICOs are going to be the solution to any of these issues. I think there's different levels you need to think about AI governance. There's, for example, within the company itself, there's things like model cards and so on that can really help provide more transparency into the way you develop things, the data sets you use, and so on. I've mentioned third-party auditing and certification schemes, but there's also the regulatory level. There's the having the right kind of framework. For example, having the same way we use cars, we know there are kind of there's a lot of laws and regulations around that that ensure that the whole ecosystem is conducive to safer cars. And I think equally you need also strong competitive markets of companies that provide tools, safe models, and so on. There's also might need to have the right standards, but I think it's a complex question that requires addressing from a lot of different stakeholders and levels to ensure that AI gets developed responsibly and you incentivize the right type of work. But nor do I think that AI should be seen as some sort of evil thing, or you need labels everywhere saying careful, there's AI, there's no AI. I mean, obviously it's helpful to know that you're interacting with an AI if you're dealing with a chatbot, or it's helpful to know transparency is a good thing. But overall, I don't think we should kind of ascribe to AI any kind of natural innate negative kind of properties in the same way as wouldn't say electricity or anything else. There are risks just like anything else, but these risks need to be counterbalanced with other opportunities and kind of benefits these bring as well.
Yeah,
Seb, just go on, please.
I'm sorry. Yeah, a word that I like a lot is interrogability. So we should make sure that we can have a trade-off between explainability and accuracy, for example, in this AI model. And we have to document this choice, because as an engineer, I can say that we usually go straight forward for more accuracy, but also explainability should be taken into account. So I fully agree on this point.
Thank you. I want to just bring Linda back in because her mic's been off for too long, and that's not good. Linda, there's a triangle here, isn't there, that probably includes privacy, security, and convenience. And we can't have all, can we as the consumer have to make these kind of choices or have them made for us. Somebody reminded me it's like the old business premise. Do you want it fast, do you want it cheap, or do you want it good? but you can't have it fast, cheap, and good. So you've got to make your choices. What sort of role does data reply and your work have in that triangle of choice?
So I mean, it's really a triangle. So you can't have them all. And I'm gonna bring up what Odilia was saying about explainability and accuracy. It's always a trade-off between something. You need to choose where you would like to focus on, and one choice doesn't exclude the other at all. But you have to be aware about the context you're working with and about the priorities that you have, and you need to be sure that you can prioritize them all and have the buy-in among all stakeholders that are involved in the process itself. So we are talking a lot about explainability. We're talking about a lot about ethics in general and trust. One thing that I'm really struggling with sometimes is that the audience is always really different. And when I say explainability and I say that I want something easy to understand by someone else, I really need to understand what is my audience, because I think that all of these topics can't be taken so broadly. So we need to specify them definitely more, and we need to be sure that we can put them in a specific context to be effective. Otherwise, we will remain too much generic, and we won't be effective. So something that we do in data reply, and something that I personally do, and I would suggest, is really trying to deep dive in the context we are, and understand exactly the audience that we are around, and trying to prioritize what is more important for the stakeholders that we're working with.
Thank you so much. We're running down the clock. Would you believe it? 4 minutes to go. We always start and finish these things on time. It's part of our credo at MKAI. Paul, you've been quiet for a while. I was fascinated by the little dialogue between Odilia and Seb. Odilia talked about initial coin offerings and blockchain and decentralization kind of derailing some of this like a market force, which is very clearly happening in banking. I mean, in big time in banking. And then Seb found a very different perspective, I think, and saw maybe those factors weren't going to be such a big deal here in this conversation, this industry. Does it depend on your frame of reference, Paul? I mean, there's people who are terrified about the effects of climate change and people that don't seem to care at all about the effects of climate change. Is it the same here? Is it how big you think this problem is and how big you want the factors to be to make change?
Well, without forcing it, it comes right back to the very start, which is everyone has a different myth. Everyone has a different vision. Everyone has a different scale. We are individuals. We have different values. Organizations have different kinds of shareholders, you know, in traditional models and hopefully more enlightened ones. And ultimately, there was a great comment from Errol Finkelstein talking about the fact that, you know, AI is doing very nicely in banking. Thank you very much. The chatbots are great. Most people kind of like them because they can get their balance, bank balance, and so on. As people on this panel know, I don't call that AI in terms of artificial intelligence, and I don't denigrate it, but it's artificial impersonation. And it's the first wave of AI. It's replacing, automating some human processes, maybe more effectively, maybe more not. The problem happens when we go beyond the 1 and the 0. Would you like to do this? Yes. Or would you like to do it? No. As George Bush said in the Iraq War, you're either with us or you're against us. Sounds a bit brutal to me and not a line that I want to be on. It's when we go to the third option and the fourth option and AI starts to become more nuanced that we have to ask what kind of world we really do want. Because, you know, without an ethical framework, well, business case again companies, you're going to get the pants suit off you if you get this wrong now and in the future respectively. But the other side of it is AI is part of a bigger agenda about, as you say, Richard, what kind of world is emerging from lockdown in the climate change kind of world to where do we want to go with this? And those decisions, those ethical frameworks are the foundations of a building. And a building will not go very high without toppling over, you know, unless you get the foundations right. You can build smartly. You can create foundations that move. You can even re-engineer foundations, but without any, I think what's happening, it's happened in lots of other areas of tech, is the innovation in the corporation for the purposes of profit maximization and other reasons starts to run ahead of the ability of, you know, universities like us to get funded and keep up. And actually non-corporate R&D for things like this is shockingly low in the world.
Thank you so much, Paul. 20 seconds. Who wants the last word? Paul, we'll let you have the last word then. Thank you so much, Paul, Vibhav, Linda, Anna, Odilia, Seb. Absolute privilege to spend an hour with you. I've learned so much. I've enjoyed the comments in the chat. Thank you for everybody that's joined us and taken this journey with us today for the last hour. Wonderful. We'll be doing it again next month. We've got all these big forum day plans to get as much in on these topics as we can. So thank you, all of you again. Thanks everybody who joined us. We'll see you very soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. See you soon.
Bye.
Thank you.